Welcome to the Salt Strong Fishing Podcast. Salt Strong has been helping saltwater anglers catch more fish in less time for 10 years and is now the largest and most trusted saltwater fishing community in America. If you want to catch more saltwater fish, then keep listening. If you want to speed up your fish catching results even faster, then join the private insider community at saltstrong.com. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Hello, Salt Strong Nation. Joe Simons, like diamonds. Got Luke Simons. What's up, dude? And
ready to have a debate on reels.
Yep, Scott Ray is with us as well from Texas, one of our coaches there from the Texas area. And we had a question in the community recently, and it was something along the lines, is it still even worth learning how to use a baitcaster in 2025? I know. And I was like, all right, well, I have an opinion, which we'll talk about here in a second. And I was like, who'd be perfect to come on here? Because this is essentially going to be baitcasters versus spinning. This is for inshore saltwater fishing, not bass fishing. This is for inshore saltwater fishing, redfish, speckled trout, snook if you got them, and flounder. And so let's get Scott on here and talk about really the pros and cons of each. And maybe by the end, we'll have an answer if you should learn how to use a baitcaster or not, if you haven't already. So where do you guys want to start with this? Maybe let me tell your story, or more our story. But we only use baitcasters. We came from bass fishing in Florida, right, Luke? If you want to kind of tell that quick story.
Yeah. So for many years, we were diehard bass fishermen growing up. We lived on a lake, and I thought that spinning gear was just for newbies. Because I learned how to throw a baitcaster when I was like 11 or 12 or something at a young age. And I was felt good by to me, it was a big deal. And it was really just, again, it was the accomplishment of the baitcaster that I just used it. And I used the baitcaster exclusively for many years. And again, thought that spinning gear was just for newbies. And then once I got into saltwater fishing, that started changing, where I met some buddies from college and went out with them, and they were doing the live bait fishing. And I saw them with spinning gear. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to crush these guys. And so I had my baitcaster with a pretty stiff rod, and we went and netted some white bait. So we're freelining. Before I would just use popping corks, and we were fishing a flat. So the bait had to be able to move around. So you can't saddle it with this, with the cork. And they crushed me. Absolutely, I was humiliated. Where I simply could not cast the little light thing at all, and that was my eye-opening moment. And it really came to getting, and I eventually started getting some stuff, and where I eventually started transitioning so far, where I didn't use baitcasts for now 5 or 6 years, because once spinning reels got smaller and smoother, and braid was the biggest thing ever for spinning. With mono, the spinning just wasn't as good. That mono has so much memory. And once braid came out, it's so thin, it casts extremely far, and specifically for the lighter stuff. That's in my opinion when it has the biggest advantage. But even on heavier lures with a 7.6 good spinning rod and 10-pound braid or even less, it launches. So I now do a little bit of both. So about, I guess 6 or 7 months ago, I had messed up my elbow with tennis. And so with baitcast, I hold everything with my left arm. So I switched to baitcast for a while, and I have found some applications where I like it, but I'll kind of let Scott chat and see where we agree or where we don't agree.
So yeah, I think it comes down to a lot of style of fishing, your presentation, stuff like that. Break it down real quick. If you are throwing anything that has bad aerodynamics or is separated weight and bait apart from each other to where it can tumble in the air, if you throw a popping cork, you're going to struggle with a baitcaster. If you throw a Carolina rig or whatever, any rig where the weight and the bait are separate from each other, you're going to struggle with a baitcaster. Now, can it be done? Yes, but you know how hard it is to match that tumble with your thumb. You got to be real good. So before we go into real deep of pros, cons, this and that, with technology today, I think the weaknesses on both sides have been mitigated a little bit to where they're not quite as bad of a weakness. One of the bigger problems for me, at least working a lure for a spinning rod or spinning setup, is they were very large, very heavy, very cumbersome. They just aren't as precise. And the rods are so good now. The reels have gotten lighter. The rods have gotten super light and sensitive. And that negative is almost, it's like average. My hand in the wrong spot. We got that mirror going. It's almost average now, right? It's not almost a deficiency anymore. And so now the same thing happened with baitcasters. We've got, like what Luke was touching on with the light stuff was, man, you go under 1/8 of an ounce. Holy moly, man, you struggle with that baitcaster. But that all has to do with the size of the spool and the weight of the spool. And so I grabbed some examples here. So I've got one with a deep spool, okay? And you can simply take it and put the smaller spool in it. And now, so that's 8-pound braid with 10-pound leader. And it works really well. And I can throw weightless hook on a 2.0. And used to could not do that. 10 years ago, before the whole BFS craze came out, you weren't casting light stuff. It was not happening. So the two biggest negatives are not even, they're not as bad anymore, right? So it really starts to come down to style of fishing, preference. Preference is a big one. I'm coming from a subject. I grew up with a baitcaster in my hand, and I'm in Texas, so there was really nobody to even put a spinning reel in my hand, right? So, and once you get to that certain skill level, we talk about like lures are easier to work and the precision with a baitcaster and all of this. If you're a 10 out of 10 skill level with a spinning setup, you're going to work that lure just fine, man. And you're not going to struggle near like, a rookie would, right? And the same with a baitcaster. If you're high skilled, you can cast that tumbling, that popping cork, right? And so once you reach past a certain skill level, I think it almost starts to not matter as much. There are some things that still, pros and cons still, but the playing field has been leveled a lot in the last 5 years with rod technology, reel technology, things like that. So, so before we start going, head to head, it's nowhere near as opposite of each other as it used to be. They're so close to each other now in performance that it isn't quite as drastic as it once was.
I haven't heard either of you guys mention wind. When I was a Texas resident there for 4.5 years. My wife and I lived there. And every time I went fishing, we were in that Houston, Galveston area. I felt like it was the windiest place ever. And if the wind's blowing in your face, it's just like, to me, it was like fishing with a fly rod. I'm like, why the heck would I ever want a baitcaster here? Have you gotten to the point now you just push through it and don't worry about it? I feel like bird nest, that stuff drives me bonkers, especially if you're sight caster, if there's a school of fish right in front of you and all of a sudden you're sitting there pulling line out.
Yeah. So again, there's pros and cons to both of them. You're going to get backlashes, and then the same thing on the other one. You've got your wind knot problem, right? And so, I think it starts to come down to how good you are at picking those out. I struggle picking out a wind knot, a really mild one, and I can pick out the worst backlash, and that's because I've been doing it. That's a subjective, like. Other people would be different. Like if you're better at the wind knot, then, so I think that comes down to kind of some of that. But the wind is an issue. That's one of the ones where I think the spinning gear might have a slight advantage. One of the ways we mitigate that casting distance, can you cast further with a spinning gear? Yes. One of the ways we
whoa, say that again. Say that again.
No, never. I will never repeat that. So yeah, you've got.
This is being recorded. We have this.
Yeah, this is being recorded. This is a podcast.
I'm just gonna play this over and over again on a shore.
So you can get more distance out of a spinning rod. But you got me distracted. I don't even remember what I was going to say now. Y'all got me thrown for a
And he said it the second time.
Second time. No, we're talking about just the wind and the amount of backlashes you get and and versus whatnots.
Yeah. So spinning's better. We're done. Podcast over. So no, I think the way we mitigate that in Texas is we wade all the time. We're always out of the boat, and man, I'm catching fish like 10 yards in front of me because they don't know I'm there. It's literally the stealthiest. Well, I guess maybe from the bank would be the stealthiest, but the stealthiest way to fish, right, is to be, out of a boat. The boat is trouble. So if you're casting from a boat, that distance matters, and that spinning reel could absolutely be the right choice then, right? But if you wade, that 5 yards is, I would rather my precision, my power to weight ratio, we work a lot of twitch baits and stuff, and I feel that especially a twitch bait or a topwater is better with a bait caster. So you get there are minor pros and cons, but there's still those differences, right? So yeah, we just wade so we don't have to cast as far.
Yeah, another factor for boating to go on with that. So and that's why I think a lot of Texans just bait cast is predominant, because I cringe when I take somebody fishing on my boat that has a bait cast, because it just requires more of a swing. So there's a lot more risk of hooking somebody nearby, where obviously when you're wading, you're further away. That's definitely a factor that needs to be in play. And I agree with you. Where in that time frame when I was doing a lot of bait casts just to let my elbow heal, I found that like working a skinny lipper, like hard plugs, like a skinny lipper or topwater, bait cast it was just noticeably more comfortable. These launch with both. I still feel like I get better casting distance with spinning gear, but it's still effortless with bait cast. And it could be, in fact, I took like a 10-year hiatus from bait cast, didn't help my casting ability for sure. But I like in general, we really teach spinning because it's just easier to learn, number one, and just less things can go wrong. Where like, as long as you don't overfill the spool and you're actually like being mindful of the line, it's very rare that you're going to have any sort of issue. Whereas like even like in month 6 of using this very frequently, I was still picking out backlashes every once in a while where I might hit something, or I'm just not paying attention, or I'm trying to skip and I misjudge it. So the ease of going from beginner to being good is so much shorter with spinning than bait cast.
I'll agree.
And even and even at the top level, like the fact that now baitcast doesn't have as much as an advantage over spinning, because now that light thin braid can equalize. You said that spinning casts further. I'll just be nice and say that it's even. It's an equalizer.
All right.
But now that you can go spinning without losing distance, and perhaps even more likely even get more distance depending on the rod that you use, of course. Spinning is just hard to not do. Like it's for somebody starting, it would be a much harder journey if you did only bait cast. And it'd be a whole lot easier if you just did spinning.
Yeah. So if you're going to bring somebody out fishing for their first time, you put a spinning reel in their hand, because they may not even get to fish that day if you put a bait caster in their hand. The learning curve is steeper and it's much more difficult. But I do feel that it's once you reach that certain level that you want those minor advantages, just like Luke was talking about, like the hard baits, the top water, stuff like that. That's more advanced angler stuff, right? Like, you start off your first lures is like a shrimp imitation under a popping cork. You're easing your way into lures. Eventually you're working a top water, then you're switching to a suspending plug, and then you're, like that's more advanced angling. And I think that the better you get, the more you lean towards wanting to throw a bait caster simply for the style of fishing. Now, if you went right back to throwing bait, you went back to a popping cork again. Why would you throw a bait caster? So, I think style of fishing has a lot to do with it as well. Regional stuff. We're we're not just baitcaster versus spinning right now. This is kind of Florida versus Texas too, right? And so what comes with that is different fisheries. Now you get down to Port Isabel or something, it's pretty similar. It's clear water and, snook and tarpon and mangroves and this and that. There's none of that here. We're straight mud and oysters and the blackest, muddiest water. So that whole thinner line thing as well, you really much better with a spinning reel. And I just showed an example of where I'm using 8-pound braid on it, and this and that, but you get it on a big old redfish and you're still going to line dig that thing. You know what I mean? And so it's still, it's one of those things with the line difference. I mean, we don't have to use as light a line. So the baitcaster isn't as much of a negative, right? And so we don't have any line shot fish. It's, I tie braid straight to my lure a lot of times. And that...
What size, what pound braid?
20 or 30 typically. And I fish with 15 and 10 sometimes. And there are times when we've got clear water and we do ever so often, you've got some clear water and it's a little bit more skittish fish, but that's not the norm, right? That's 20 days out of the year instead of 20 days out of the year, the opposite for y'all. They're not line shy 20 days out of the year, right? So I think that has a lot to do with it as well. The habitat. Luke, you have any piggyback on that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you're saying, and I was just trying to think when I like bait casts, like an advantage of being good at both. I think for advanced anglers, it's good to be good at both. Yeah. And where I find myself, especially if you're casting lures all day, it seems like most people for a bait cast have the actual handle on the right, whereas spinning's on the left. So you can give your arms a break by switching one or the other. Also with skip casting, like if you're fishing a lot of shorelines, like I fish a ton of shorelines, and so I'm more comfortable skipping a lure with spinning on my left side. So if I'm going down a shoreline and the wind is requiring me to go where I'm skipping on my good left side, then that's great. But if the winds and currents are forcing me to go the other way, instead of having to go around and do like an overhand backhand skip cast with spinning, which is possible, and I've done it for many years, it sure is easier just to get a nice, comfortable sidearm cast with a baitcaster when I'm in that orientation. So there's a lot of pros of being good at both.
Yes.
I still stand by the until you're an advanced angler, don't even worry about bait casts and just get comfortable with spinning and again, like we always teach, put your time and your energy, your brain energy on finding the fish, not on not getting a backlash.
Yeah. No, totally.
That is the word saying.
Absolutely. So I'll play devil's advocate. What if it's easier to get over that hump early? Like teaching a child Spanish versus teaching an adult Spanish, right? The earlier you start it, the easier the learning curve is to get over. Also, the less frustrated you are. Your first day of fishing, you catch one fish. It's, hey, you had a good day, right? So I think that there could be a counter argument there. I won't bang that one too hard, but I learned I was throwing a baitcaster in my hands at 3 years old. I didn't know any different. I used my dad's stuff till he bought me one at 3.5 or 4, whatever it was, and then I didn't know any different. I never saw the learning curve. I don't remember the learning curve, right? So maybe I'm a little biased on that learning curve thing, but yeah, there's always those pros and cons, and I think it really does come down to style of fishing, skill level, regional as well. We kind of covered that, but yeah, I think the learning curve may be something that if you're an adult and you start fishing, yeah, but for a child, they're going to fumble through everything they touch anyway, right? So turn them brakes all the way up. He's casting 10 yards. We're catching perch. He's learning a baitcaster. So my daughter's going to get a baitcaster when she turns 3. Just saying.
You talking like a legit baitcaster, or like a push button Zebco, like a lot of us started off?
Yeah, legit open face baitcaster. It's an Abu Garcia. I already have it. She just doesn't touch it yet. Yeah. Yeah.
That's pretty funny. I'm curious, is an advanced angler, and I'm talking to you, Scott, do you get some sort of backlash every trip?
Yeah.
Like if you, okay.
Yes. So, and the reason for that, I could not. I could absolutely choose not to. But that's that 5 yards casting distance that I want. You know, if I guarantee no backlashes, then I'm not pushing the limits of how far I'm casting. And if I see a trout pop over there or a redfish tail roll far away or something, click, 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 I'm gonna try to send it, and it might backlash. And if I do, I'm going to pick my backlash out and I'm going to walk towards that fish while I'm picking it out. And then I'm going to do my shorter cast and get him. Yeah, I think that if you're not pushing the limits, what you doing out there? You know, you just having fun. I mean, I'm trying to catch fish and I'm trying to push the limits. So I'm trying to cast as far as I can every time. I will constantly be making adjustments on the brakes on my baitcaster. And that can be wind is blowing 20 directions one way and it's at my back. Brakes are all the way off. I'm sending them to the moon, right? If I need to turn around immediately, brakes are turned on, and because I'm casting into the wind now, right? And so just turning around, you just adjust those brakes. And so yeah, I'm backlashing often, but again, that comes down to that skill level. Like most of my backlashes are out in under 5 seconds, and that's not near as big of a deal as somebody that's like, man, you missed the fish because you're sitting there playing with that thing for 5 minutes, you know? There's a skill level with picking out those backlashes, and that's a big deal too. So, one of the ways, I'll give you guys a trick. One of the ways to keep those backlashes from getting so nasty, and this is another...
Do you use a spinning reel?
Hey, there's another one. Too nice.
I thought that's where you're going.
No, not at all. I already said the cast.
No, our mistake.
I'm not giving them no. I'm not telling you guys no more bones. God, it got me distracted again. What was I saying? Oh, yes. Okay. So one of the good things, I'm going to grab a baitcaster real quick. So, let me show off one of these rare ones that no one's ever seen. Okay. So I collect baitcasters as well. And this is like a limited edition, super cool one. Of course, I wanted to show it off on the baitcaster video. So one of the things you can do is you can do almost everything with one hand. I can reel the reel. So I literally can work a topwater as I'm reeling my reel. And this hand is doing nothing. Okay. You also, as you're fighting a fish, okay, Luke, you trying it right now? As you're fighting a fish, I can add drag without like taking my hand off the handle and having to go to the end of it. So with that said, always on a baitcaster, 2 reasons that you want your drag loose on a baitcaster, looser than what you would fight the fish at. Number 1, when you backlash, it isn't as bad. It'll let that spool, instead of stopping and digging and those loops digging, that spool will slip a little and it'll roll and they won't dig as deep. The second thing about it is when you have your drag down tight and you backlash with a heavy lure, even if you get your backlash out and whatever else, but you're damaging every time you're hammering on that pinion gear. So those 2 gears, right, that every time it backlashes, it's a hard hammer on that. And that's what will cause your baitcaster to eventually go and have that little buzzy sound when you're reeling. That's imperfections in your pinion gear. And you cause that by backlashing with a heavy lure with too tight a drag. Number 3, not just can you adjust your drag as you're reeling, you can also, I'm always backwards on you can also just thumb the spool. Okay. And so I have a loose drag, and when I set the hook, I thumb the spool to make sure I don't slip on my drag, right? And then that way I can fight the fish properly. And when I'm casting, I don't have that backlash with the tight drag. Okay. So that whole quick adjustment of the drag with one hand, I think is a huge advantage in fighting fish and mitigating some of the negatives that come with the baitcaster.
I said that, but that's also a huge risk for somebody who's not skilled with that. Because like the messing with the drag during like a battle is, I think, what causes a ton of people to lose their fish because it's very easy to over tighten. So like I personally, until the fish is like right near the boat, I never touch the drag no matter what. I will only loosen it. I never tighten it because it's just not worth the risk.
See, so I run mine super loose and I graduate up into where it needs to be per fish. And that may be a little advanced for people. You're totally right, Luke. That may be a little advanced for people, but when you're one-handed a bait caster with a lure, you're probably pretty advanced already. But
what reel was that? You said it was.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So this is a Daiwa Tatula Mago HD. It was a collaboration with Goncraft, who makes swim baits. And it's got some special graphics on it. It's got a special spool. It's for throwing a little bit larger baits. It's for like 3/4 ounce to 1.5 ounce. And yeah, it's a limited edition. This is number, oh goodness, where's it at? It may just be on the box.
Do you use it?
Oh, no.
Or is this more for?
No, yeah, it's just a collectible.
Sure.
I have a lot of collectibles. Yeah, I got like 100 bait casters.
Dang, yeah.
More like 60 or 80.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
So
That's
I
amazing.
think another factor that needs to be considered too is really the price point. And so a reason why I didn't like baitcasters for many time is I was going in at the same price point as I do for spinning. Spinning reels for saltwater fishing in particular. Spinning reels, just their design, the nature of their design is just better at keeping salt out of the innards. And so for saltwater fishing, you can spend, in my opinion, you can spend about half of what you would on bait cast and have the same amount, if not better, of longevity due to salt exposure, would be my argument.
I don't disagree, but I got a tiny bit of a counter argument for you. So we wade, and again, this is wading. So this is a style of fishing. This is a regional thing. If you're going to fish out of a boat, then what I'm about to say doesn't even apply. And the saltwater exposure is exactly like Luke said. But when you're wading, you've got a spinning reel that's hanging 6 or 8 inches below your rod. And I wade the Salt Strong logo deep sometimes, all the time. And we're fishing here. And with that extra 6 or 8 inches hanging off the bottom, I dunk a spinning reel way more than I dunk a bait caster. And the accidental splash up, all of that. So I think only when wading, there is less exposure on a bait caster simply because it's 2 inches above my hands, not 6 inches below them. Right. And when you're wading that deep, that can be a big difference. That can be a big deal.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So again, if you don't wade, then, null and void. Right. So.
For boaters, like traveling over bays, like just with the salt spray. Yeah. Like I'm way more comfortable with my spinning. If I know I'm going to be going through a lot of rough stuff, I don't even take the bait caster just because mine are all more expensive. And I just know that it's just so much easier. Like even I finally got the Coastal. This is one that actually does have some more sealing, but it's like over $200, and I'm still not as comfortable with it because actually this one's pretty well sealed, but I can still like see some of the innards, right? So if I can see it, that means some salt spray can get in it. So like I would trust my $100 Fuego or the Otis or whatever, like these spinning reels that are
level almost
$100
spinning reel over a high-end bait caster for the salt resistance. Yeah. So Daiwa was actually doing the best job with that right now. That mag seal is really, really cool. It's like a magnetic oil, and it's pretty cool. If you haven't seen the little demo they have with the magnet and the oil, and they show it to you, and it's interesting stuff. And it works really well. The problem is you got to have that stuff to service that thing. So now you need the mag oil, right?
What's the lowest level bait cast that they have mag seal? Is it the?
Oh man, off the top of my head, I don't know. I think that I know the Tatula has it, but they make like 8 models of Tatula now. So I know some of the Tatulas have it. I don't know about below that. And the Tatula is a great reel. It's a long shaft design, and most of the bait casters are going with short shaft now. It's talking about the spool shaft, simply because you can cast lighter lures with it. There's no reason to have that extra length of shaft there that's just weight added to the spool. And that's another cool thing about bait casters is you can just throw another spool in it and you have an entire different profile of casting that you can use, right? Like, for example, that one that I showed you earlier. I throw heavy top waters with this deep spool and it needs respooled. It has almost nothing on it anymore. That's why it's not on the rod. And I literally take that side plate off. I do this in 10 seconds. But, I'm not going to do it in front of the camera, but you just take it off and put this one in. And now I'm throwing rainbow trout lures at the little stock pond up the road, the little super duper that's like 3 grams. And that's the same rod I'm throwing at top water, the same reel I'm throwing at top water and catching trophy trout with. Like, boop, boop. Now I'm finesse fishing. And that's pretty cool. And that's new. That's that technology that is coming out that is, 5-10 years ago was not like that. And the same thing with spinning. There's so much advancements in the technology that, again, they're catching up with each other and equaling each other out. So
cool. You mentioned Daiwa. What are the other 1 or 2 top brands that are that the Texans in particular swear by?
So, brand preference is always a very controversial thing, right? Everybody's got their brand that they swear by, and it's a confidence thing too. Just like a lure color or something, man. I mean, there's a confidence level with a brand you trust and this and that. I would stay with brands that if that brand wasn't out when you were a kid, I don't know that I would mess with it. Now, I'm not saying that all of them are bad. It's that, your big 3 or 4 have been the big 3 or 4 for 40, 50 years for a reason. And there's a lot of little startup companies. There's a company in Texas and, they just started up and they're taking the baitcaster world by storm. And so do you guys remember when 13 Fishing come out with the concept reels? Okay. Unbelievably high performance. Man, those things were amazing. But you tore them up. In weeks, they tore up. They had a level wind that they had an aluminum worm gear and a chrome plated steel pawl pin. And man, and they had like a 20-pound drag. So people would lock the drag down and winch in a redfish. And that pin is just eating through that aluminum. And like, they would tear them up day one. They also had low saltwater corrosion. Now, this is 10 years ago. That company is sold, and 13 Fishing is owned by another company now, and yada yada. So none of that's the same. I'm using it as an example. That was extremely high performance, but it was extremely low durability and kind of a bad design. And
really expensive too.
Holy moly, those guys were $300-$400. Yeah. Okay. And so that was a lot of hype and a lot of marketing that went into that reel's revenue that it made, right? Like its success was based off of, man, they made a teal colored one, called it the TX, right? Oh man, every wade fisherman in Texas had that thing. And then I operated a reel repair business at the time. This is how I know the details of how bad these things were. Dude, within a month, my shop was full of those things, like full of them. I had nothing but green colored reels all in my shop. And so it was like, you guys are buying this reel off of a color and a commercial. Like, come on. Now we have the exact same thing happening right now with another company in the baitcaster world. And is it high performance? My goodness, that thing casts super lightweight. Just, your first time you open it out of the box, you're blown away. Fish with it for 6 months. You're probably sending it back. And that's one of those things. Like, that's why I say Daiwa, Shimano, Luz, Abu Garcia, whatever. There's 2 or 3 more, but that's your core tackle and whatever, all across the board, really. They make other things besides the baitcasters, but those are staple companies and have been for a while. You also want to look at how many models they make. How many baitcasters does Daiwa make? Oh my gosh, guys. I think it's like 40 in their lineup, and that's American. You can look at Japanese models and Australian models and stuff like that, and there's even more. Shimano, same thing. Tons of them. These new companies, 1 or 2. And the things they're changing is like, they'll make it a different color and put a different handle on it. So be careful with new companies. Unless you know a person that's had one for 2 or 3 years, I don't know that I would waste $400 on some hype. You see what I mean? And these baitcasters, just like Luke said, they ain't cheap.
Yeah, and reels too. This is where it's the easiest to get burnt, as mentioned. Where like rods, like they don't have hardly any moving parts. There's actually no moving parts of the rod. You just have to make sure that the guides aren't made from a junk material and start rusting. But a reel, you have so many moving parts that are intricately designed. If hasn't been a ton of R&D to develop those gears and the gear materials, as mentioned, if it's the wrong material hitting against another one, it can go bad quick. And I agree. And I would say that same thing on the spinning side. That's not just baitcaster. So those big companies are big. They've been around for a long time for a reason, and they of course have the most R&D.
Yeah. So that actually was another flaw with the 13 fishing concept reels back in the day, was they had an aluminum alloy main drive gear and their pinion gear was brass. And so one of them is really corrosion resistant, kind of soft. And the other one is extremely very susceptible to corrosion, but hard as a rock. Right. And so, man, you got to have the same metal on that. Dude, you can't have those two like that. So they were shearing gears off and everything left and right. And so, that's that R&D. That's that, they built something that they built in a lab and an engineer put that together. And if you've ever worked construction, those engineers need to get out in that field more often, right? Because they're designing things and the guy putting it together is going, you see, this doesn't fit, right? Like, and the same thing there, like if they would have just done, 8-10 months or whatever, 6 months of R&D, then, they wouldn't have had that issue when they released, 100,000 reels to the public. Right. So, and the same thing again is happening with a very popular company in Texas. I'm refraining from calling them out. I actually had a lot of conversations with the owner of that company. I reached out to them multiple times and tried to help them with their design. I'm passionate about baitcasters. Start up a Texas baitcaster company, count me in, but you see that didn't go anywhere, and they're still making things that need improvement. So.
Interesting. Cool. Well, I was going to go into a whole baitcaster pairing with rods, but I feel like that could be a whole separate conversation. We're already almost 37 minutes into it. We'll have to have you back and do another one.
Apologize.
No, this was fantastic. Yeah. What do you guys think? What's the summation? It sounds like if you're advanced, you need to learn both. If you're maybe just starting out with saltwater fishing, probably easier and probably more cost effective just to start off with spinning. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I think we all agree on the pros and cons of each. I held back some of my derogatory terms for the spinning reels. Have you guys heard some of those? They're funny. Call them like a egg beater, right? Or like a cake mixer, right? Out there fishing with a cake mixer. You'll hear those terms in Texas. So anyways, I wanted to throw those out there before we quit. So.
I love it. Cool. Well, that's it. We'll have more. Obviously, this will be an ongoing conversation. And we do believe at Salt Strong that to be a complete angler, you need to know it all, including fly fishing. It's good to be able to go out there and catch fish with a variety of things, including lures and live bait, etc. So make sure to comment down below if you have some thoughts on this one way or the other. And we'll put this on YouTube, the blog, obviously a podcast. If you guys are listening and want to watch it, we'll have it on YouTube as well. So appreciate you, Scott, for joining us here and giving it your best shot at your bird nesting baitcasters. And
I love it.
Throw that one in there last time.
I love it.
We appreciate you guys big time.
Awesome, man. Thanks for watching.
Cool.
See ya.
Want more fishing tips, shortcuts, and tools so you can catch more fish per trip? Then head over to saltstrong.com now and join the movement. Tight lines, and thanks for listening.